You're muted though.
I was saying that I'm just going to wait one more minute till it's 10 o'clock.
It's 10 o'clock.
Till it's 10 o'clock, and then we'll begin. So, all right, here we go. Good morning and welcome to the 2020 meeting of the New York City Campaign Finance Board. The first item of business is the approval of minutes from the meeting of July 16th, 2020. I move the approval of those minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Next item of business is the chair's report, so here goes. Earlier this month, the Campaign Finance Board issued the first public funds payments to candidates for city offices in the general election. The board paid out more than $23,000 to one candidate in the Queensborough president race. There will be at least 3 more opportunities for public funds payments prior to the election in November. The board will be ratifying that first payment during this meeting. Looking further ahead, more than 250 candidates have now registered with the CFB for the 2021 elections. That's more than double the number of candidates registered with us at the same point ahead of the 2013 elections, and more than 3 times more than in 2009 or 2017. In fact, during the 6-month fundraising period completed in July, the CFB received a record 92 candidate registrations. The CFB started tracking registrations during the 2005 elections, the first in which all city candidates were required to register with the agency. Clearly, candidate interest in next year's citywide elections is very high. It is relieving that the coronavirus pandemic does not appear to have dampened New Yorkers' interest in running for office. Among the many benefits of the city's matching funds program is providing city voters with more competitive elections and a more diverse pool of candidates. Raising small contributions that are matched with public funds makes that possible. It is good to see so many candidates expressing their confidence in the campaign finance program by stepping forward to serve their city. I'll now turn to Naomi Zatterer for a report from the CFB's Voter Assistance Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Chair Schaefer. Last week, the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee hosted its 2nd annual We the Young People hearing. We heard testimony from young New Yorkers about increasing civic engagement among the city's youngest citizens. We've hosted such a hearing because we want more young people to get involved in our local elections and local government. We got to hear directly from several of this city's young leaders who offered their suggestions while also identifying the ways our current system lets them down. And of course, they expressed their views in ways that only New Yorkers can. We heard poetry, written testimony, and more. I highly encourage you all to watch the hearing on the CFB's YouTube channel and follow NYC Votes on social media to be in the know on other opportunities like this one. NYC Votes will soon launch another opportunity for creative New Yorkers to showcase their artistic talent to promote voting. Working with Link NYC, we will open a competition next month for artwork to inspire participation in the November elections. Participants in the competition will have the chance to see their artwork displayed on thousands of Link NYC devices throughout the city. The NYC Votes Art on Link partnership will aim to inspire participation in this critical presidential election. I now turn to Amy Loprest, Executive Director of the New York City Campaign Finance Board, for her report. Thank you.
Thank you. So in a further indication that the pandemic has not dampened the enthusiasm for running for office, in the July filing, we had 203 filers. 184 of them adopted use of our online platform, NYC Votes Contribute, that allows an easy way for candidates to collect contributions online. In fact, we had the best usage of that platform that we've ever had in the month of July. In just the 10 days between July 1st and July 10th, over $800,000 was raised on that platform. So, you know, candidates are using it, and it's a useful tool to raise contributions while everyone is working remotely. And finally, I also wanted to just acknowledge that this week we marked the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment that allowed women the right to vote. And while that promise of the right to vote was not completely realized for everyone in the country until the passage of the Voting Rights Act, it was an important milestone in the work that we have to do to encourage voting and allowing everyone to have the right to vote. So with that, we can move on to the rest of the agenda.
Thank you very much. We have two candidate appearances. On the line.
So you froze up a little, so I think we'll go first with Doyle.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Hello.
Is that Mr. Doyle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is the CFB staff person on the line?
Yes, Chair Schaefer.
Mr. Doyle, for your benefit, the way this works is I'm going to ask the CFB staff to just basically tee up what the issues are before us. It'll be very brief. Then it'll be your opportunity to discuss any of the issues that you are contesting. There'll be probably a response from the CFB staff, and then any questions from the board. We'll give you an opportunity to conclude or sum up at the end if you wish. We'll then hear the next candidate, and then we go into deliberations. And after the deliberations, we'll report back on our decision. All right? Good. So let's proceed.
Good morning, Chair Schaefer, members of the board, Executive Director Loprest, and Mr. Doyle. I'm Joseph Gallagher, Senior Associate Counsel for the CFB, and appearing remotely with me today is Leandra Flores, an auditor of the CFB. Before the board this morning is the matter of the John Doyle campaign in the 2017 primary election for City Council, District 13 in the Bronx. The campaign was a participant in the program and received public funds. CFB staff recommends that the board find the campaign committed the following 7 violations of the Act and board rules: failing to report transactions, failure to demonstrate compliance with cash receipts, reporting and documentation requirements, filing late disclosure statements, accepting an over-the-limit contribution, accepting contributions from corporations, limited liability companies, and partnerships, making a cash expenditure greater than $100, and making impermissible post-election expenditures. The campaign contests these violations and penalties.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Doyle, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher, for your assistance. And really thank you for this program. I'm a working class person from the Bronx. My family has no extravagant means. And I don't know if I could have run without the assistance that the CFB and the campaign finance system provides. I'm going to contest of the 4 violations, and I'll go through them really quickly. I would like to start with the 3rd violation about late disclosure statements. I don't contest that the disclosure statements were filed late. I would say one was within a day when we had our campaign manager had just come on, and obviously he was not from New York City, had to be trained in the software. That took a little time. And then the final one was 3 days after the primary itself. And unfortunately, we were in need, and I was handling this, so full responsibility. This was in need of getting some campaign documents and some last minute disclosure statements and other materials. And unfortunately, when the staff was all over the country on other campaigns, unfortunately that created a barrier to meeting that deadline. So I'll leave that. That was violation 3. On violation 4, and I would, this is the over the limit contribution. I would call your attention to Exhibit 4, where there is a cash donation card. It was inputted into the system. It's there. We have the documentation on it. We had a similar issue with another item with the CFB, which we were able to clear up here. Obviously, we have the contribution card. We have the evidence that this is not an over the limit contribution. We're talking about $100. It was done by a contributor's wife. And, we're hoping that, for whatever reason, we would be happy to amend a disclosure statement. This seems to be an issue of a documentation of proper filing, which we've cleared up other issues. It would have been nice to clear up this issue as well through that means. We're talking about $100 contribution and a $250 violation. Hopefully we can work that out. And then for violation,
let's stay with that one just for a sec.
Yes, sir.
So the problem, as I understand it, is that it was originally a
You froze again.
Contribution, and there was a contribution card from his wife, but that sort of looks like they were trying to correct what was an over the limit contribution after the fact. Do you want to address that?
You broke up, sir. I couldn't hear most of what your response was.
I'm sorry. I'll start again. The problem, as I understand it, is that initially it was the contribution card was from Mr. Beater. The second contribution card was from his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked like it was his contribution. It was over the limit when he realized, or you guys realized it was over the limit. You got the wife to say it was hers, not his. That, I think, from the staff's point of view, looked suspicious. So I'd like you to address that.
Yeah, I mean, both were supporters, both were voters of mine. I think that, obviously this is a case where the spouse filled out the form for both of them and then went back and corrected it.
Staying with that just for a moment longer, Mr. Gallagher, if the contribution had been returned to the husband and then the wife had made a new contribution in her name, there would have been no problem. Is that right?
That's right. And the issue with this one, as well as that it wasn't, the amendment never occurred. I think the campaign attempted to change the reporting, but then the actual submission never happened. So that's where it got flagged. But yeah, it is true if it was, and we notified the campaign as part of the disclosure statement 11 review that there was this over the limit contribution. So that was the first opportunity for the campaign to do something about it or fix it. And then it wasn't until the DAR response is when we received the new contribution documentation from the wife. But it is true, yes, if they had refunded the $100 to the husband and then the wife made the contribution, there would be no violation.
Yeah, I think this was dealt with after the fact. So I would just ask you to keep that into consideration. And again, after the fact, I believe the money had already been returned to the CFB. And in the end, it still would have resulted in the same thing, which would have been the wife filling out the card. So that's where I would conclude with that.
You want to move on?
Okay, sure. Next would be violation 5. This is the largest violation, and obviously my defense would be in 3 parts. With respect to the 875 for corporations, partnerships, and limited liability companies, as was said in past documentation, and I'll repeat here, we checked with each of these. I believe there were about 7 different, people who had filled out contribution cards in their own names. And we had checked with them. We had looked through the campaign finance booklet and said, is this a sole proprietorship for which it would have been allowed? A few of these people are singular real estate agents. A few of them were very, very small businesses. We were assured each and every time, yes, we're a sole proprietorship. Obviously, this was flagged by CFB. We sought to contest it. This was during the campaign. At the end of the day, we realized that, it wasn't worth contesting any further. We refunded the purchases. Again, this is another case where none of these funds were ever spent in furtherance of the campaign. They were all eventually refunded before the end of the campaign. And, in my opinion, just the fine in and of itself, again, when not a single dollar was spent in furtherance of the campaign, is a kind of a harsh penalty, as there's no underlying violation as again, the monies were returned and were not spent in the aid of my election. So that's where I would leave that for the 875.
Oh, you're muted, Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gallagher, you want to address that point?
Sure. The campaign was given the same amount of time as any other campaign, 20 days, when they were notified that these contributions were considered corporate contributions, and it wasn't until after the deadline that they were eventually refunded.
Were they refunded before the primary?
Let me see the dates. One moment. So there's 8 of them. Number 1, John Morales. The deadline to refund was July 17th, and the campaign refunded it on July 26th. The second contribution, the deadline to refund was again May 15th, and it was refunded on July 26th. The next was due to be refunded on March 15th, and it was refunded on March 17th, so that one was very close. The next was March 15th, and it was refunded on March 17th. So some were refunded soon after the deadline, and a couple were some time passed.
Were they all? But they were all refunded.
They're all before the primary. Yes.
And just to further that, I don't dispute anything Mr. Gallagher just said. I would just call back that, again, a little bit of this is communication you have with your donors. And when your donors are telling you one thing, and you want to believe these folks who are nice enough to contribute to your campaign and believe in you, and they're telling you you're a sole proprietorship, you do take them at their word, and you do go back to the board. And we were in constant communication with the CFB. It's not as if this was just done late. We were in communication with them. They were telling us that they were sole proprietorships. We were going back to the CFB. Eventually, in between two different people saying two different things and realizing that this needed to be resolved, we dropped the issue. We refunded the purchases. Again, no dollar that was in question with this violation were ever spent. They were all refunded well before the primary.
Okay. And anything further, Mr. Doyle?
Yes, on the next point of that violation, this is the $750 fine for the weekly Bengali. If you look at Exhibit B, page 76, there is a contemporary email between myself and my campaign manager saying this was not the original price we had agreed to. Again, we chose to reach out to certain ethnic media to reach the broadest swath of voters. And unfortunately, there seemed to be some sort of miscommunication with this particular vendor. We never agreed to pay $1,000. We would never approve such an expenditure. And, I don't know if it was a language barrier or what have you, but after speaking to the vendor verbally, he agreed that it would just be a $500 contribution in terms of the ads and everything else. We would have never spent $1,000 on this particular purchase. We spoke to them. We thought we had corrected this in terms of our working with the vendor. And again, we're talking about a discrepancy of $500 and the fine is $750. It's also, again, we have a contemporary email from the time of the dispute, clarifying that we would have never spent $1,000 on this. So this is not an attempt to fix something after the fact. This was a miscommunication at the fact. The ad ran, and we, again, had agreed to a set price. That was the price we had paid. Finally, after that, Part C was the other $750. This was a vendor, Mr. Landy. He was personal friend, volunteer, donating his personal time and personal equipment. Sorry about that. Personal time, personal equipment for shooting a few videos. This is another thing that could have been easily clarified rather than issuing a violation. The violation is more than what was anticipated to be the fair market value of the service itself. And again, this was a volunteer on their personal time, using their personal equipment, trying to help the campaign. This was not a corporate contribution. And I think that, kind of things got lost in translation here. And this was just someone trying to lend their skill set to a campaign, as if anyone else would with web design or many other vendors or what have you. So I think this is a little extreme as well, frankly.
How do you know it was his personal equipment?
He told me. He told me, and we could get a statement clarifying that. I believe a clarifying statement had already been submitted at least once, but we could get a clarifying statement saying it was his personal time and personal equipment. We never hired out to an outside vendor to do, a few videos, web videos that went on social media pages.
I would just say it was the fact that he'd never affirmed that personal equipment was used during the shoot of these videos that created the issue for us.
I mean, we would be happy to clarify that now. That seems like a very small, minor thing that could be done in an email, like we've clarified, other points of contention with the Campaign Finance Board. I appreciate the thoroughness, and I'm sincere and genuine in that. And that, this is taxpayer dollars and we have to make sure they're adequately spent, and that the board and Mr. Gallagher here serve a vital role in furthering that. No one wants to see taxpayer dollars misspent. Everyone wants to see a campaign finance system on the up and up, myself included, as a person who's politically interested. But, this is a case where this was someone personally helping out the campaign, trying to do something, with the best of intentions here. And this could easily be solved with an email.
I thought you said that there already was some documentation indicating this was his personal equipment. Did I misunderstand something?
I said that there had been something personally documenting that he was a volunteer and this was his personal time. I thought it also said personal equipment. If Mr. Gallagher says that's not the case, I believe him as well, and I know he's doing a good faith effort here. But that could be easily clarified in a furthering email, which we would be happy to provide in a timely fashion.
I just wanted to say that, it's not about public funds being misspent, but it's about this being, campaign videos is a large expenditure for a campaign. So if opponents are paying, multiple hundreds or thousands of dollars for campaign videos, but then one candidate has a personal friend who shoots campaign videos for a living and they want to volunteer those services, it just has to be very clear that this is a personal contribution. And it just wasn't clear from the statement. The statement from Mr. Landy is at Exhibit 2 at page 72, if you'd like to read what he said completely.
I'm going to look at that right now. Exhibit 2 at page 72. Hold on a second.
I have it here. I can read it for you.
Why don't you do that?
Sure. It says, to whom it may concern, my name is Jerry Landy, and I'm the CEO of Fiona Studios Incorporated. I was also a volunteer on John Doyle's city council campaign in 2017. Part of my volunteer work for the campaign was helping to independently shoot 3 short videos for the campaign. In this process, I was volunteering my expertise and personal services to do this, but not through my company. If you have any questions, please reach out to me at this number.
I mean, this is a case where we would have been happy to include 2 further words if that was needed to satisfy the requirement, and we could go back and do that now. I mean, it's kind of clear when he says he's working independently, volunteering his personal expertise and services. I would assume that would carry over to equipment, but that's me, and I understand I have a vested interest in what's going on here.
So
Okay.
And when was that email sent?
That
July
was
9th.
sent in response to the DAR, I think, right,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle? Yeah.
Yes, sir. It was sent
Yeah,
this year, July
it's-
9th.
Did, in response to the DAR, he invites, I guess, CFB to get back to him if you have any further questions. Did anybody ever get back to him?
No, we don't usually contact vendors personally from the campaign CFB staff, but no one reached out to him after that email.
Also, the email was directed to Mr. Doyle, just to be clear.
Oh, thanks, Amy.
It came to the CFB, but it was directed to Mr. Doyle.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay, and then I'm sorry, did anyone else have any questions on that?
No, go on.
Okay. The last one here is violation 6. This is the cash expenditure of $280. This was for the kickoff party for the campaign. This was the only time we did a cash expenditure greater of $100. Was our first event. And Hannah Edgerton, who was our liaison at the time, flagged this. And, obviously we agreed never to do it again. We had reserved this space. We had, kind of entered into an agreement. And then after the fact, after the event, they were saying, the vendor was saying that they needed a certain amount of the money in cash that night to pay staff. So we were in a bind here. This is not something that had been made clear before time. Had it been clear before time, obviously we would have tried to work around this any which way. I mean, we had the checkbook. We were happy to write checks. This was not a case if there was not enough money in the account. It was a very successful fundraiser. We had been getting money online. This is something that the host site threw on us after the event, and we were kind of left holding the bag on this. So I'm going to ask again that like I asked with the first contention here, that the board kind of just takes that into consideration when making a final determination. Is that we only did this cash expenditure at the demand of the vendor after the event, where we're all kind of just standing there. And unfortunately, had this been clear beforehand, we may have actually went with a different host location that evening.
I think Mr. Doyle was saying it wasn't made clear by the vendor that 10% would be required in cash, but it is made clear in the handbook that cash expenditures greater than 100 are not permissible in the program. But I understand what Mr. Doyle said.
And it was documented, and it never happened again after the first event. This was not a repeat problem. It was flagged. Credit to your staff. They brought it right to our attention, made clear how serious that was. And, again, the campaign went on for almost 2 more years, and this was never an issue anytime thereafter.
All right. Anything further?
Thank you all for your time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Your presentation was most helpful. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to the next candidate appearance. Is there a representative, or is the candidate, Mr. Menchaca, on the line?
Can we hold on 1 second, because we are having a slight difficulty getting Mr. Menchaca into the meeting. Mr. Ferrante, do you know if he has succeeded?
I'm waiting to hear back from Mr. Tagani, his attorney, who I believe is on the line.
Hi, this is Arjan Tagani. I am on the line. Mr. Menchaca has told me that he is in the waiting room. I see that he's not on the meeting.
Yes, unfortunately, we cannot see him in the waiting room, so we had suggested that if he left and then just tried to rejoin again, that maybe that would work, because he does not appear to be accessible in a waiting room that we see as the meeting controllers.
Let me tell him to do so right now.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll just pause for a minute or two.
So I should say that we are also joined by a staff member of the campaign, Claudia Galicia. She's also on the line. I see her in the meeting as well. I believe she wanted to make a statement after I spoke as well.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning and welcome.
He said he's tried. Same problem. As far as he sees, he is still in the waiting room.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Amy, is there
Yeah.
anything you can do about this?
We are trying to work on it. So let me just try.
I've just sent Cameron his direct email. That maybe a direct link might work better.
I just sent him another link. Let me know if that works.
I think I see that he's in.
Mr. Menchaca, are you? Yes. Oh, success. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. That's fine. That's fine. So we're all together again. Just to briefly state the procedure, the CFB staff, Mr. Ferrante will go first and just sort of tee up the issues that are before us. I'll then ask for Mr. Menchaca or his representative to address the disputed items. There'll probably be some response from Mr. Ferrante, perhaps some questions from members of the board. When we're done, we'll take a break and go into deliberations and come back with a decision. All right, so Mr. Ferrante, why don't you start it off?
Good morning, Chair Schaefer, members of the board, and Executive Director Loprest. My name is Cameron Ferrante. I'm a Senior Associate Counsel for the CFB, and joining us virtually today is CFB Auditor Leandra Flores. Before the board is the matter of the Carlos Menchaca campaign in the 2017 election for City Council District 38. The candidate was a participant in the program and received $124,350 in public funds. CFB staff recommends that the board find that the campaign committed the following violations of the Act and board rules and assess penalties according to the 2017 penalty guidelines. Failing to report transactions, failing to demonstrate compliance with cash receipts reporting and documentation requirements, failing to demonstrate compliance with reporting requirements for receipts, filing a late disclosure statement, failing to report transactions in daily pre-election disclosure statements, failing to document transactions, accepting a contribution from a corporation, accepting over-the-limit contributions, and making impermissible post-election expenditures. The campaign contests recommended violations 6 through 9 and the associated penalties.
Thank you. So, Mr. Tagani, I guess the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Schaefer, Director Loprest, and members of the board. My name is Arjun Tagani. I'm appearing on behalf of Carlos 2017, and of course, we're joined today by the candidate and the campaign staff. As stated by CFB staff, the committee contests the 7th and 9th recommended violations and penalties. We do not contest the 1st through 5th, and we no longer contest the 6th and 8th penalty recommendation. Regarding the 7th recommended penalty, the $896.40 payment to TrueCore, the committee has stated in its response at the to the staff's enforcement notice that it paid TrueCore, but the check was not deposited by the vendor, and since the time of payment, TrueCore ceased to operate, and the committee has thus been unable to contact anybody, and the check has gone uncashed. While the committee acknowledges that it owes payment for these services, it contests that any penalty should be applied. The committee complied with board rules when paying for TrueCore services, and the failure of TrueCore to deposit the check was through no fault of the committee. Rather, the committee is willing to make a payment to the public fund for the value of the services received. Regarding the 9th recommended penalty, the committee contests penalties. Sorry.
Stay with the prior one just for a second. Do you know when they went out of business?
I do not know. Through an investigation,
I mean, they were your consultant, so presumably they were in business through the end of the campaign, no?
It appears at some point in 2018, when preparing this particular response to the enforcement notice, there was some sort of statement on their website as a thank you and general going out of business, and this was in October 2019. Since then, the website has been edited, and there's just a very general nothing about the services they provide, but it's just an open page. The Twitter account at the time of the response was entirely dead. Since then, some tweets have been sent out, but unrelated to the services they provide. It seems maybe their Twitter is being used by somebody else. I believe Claudia might be able to provide a little bit more information as to the date, but it appears to be early 2018 that they ceased operating.
And was there a principal of this consulting firm that you all had a relationship with?
We hired their services because they did some canvassing, but when we were aware that check, we had the same issue with another company with the check. It's always very problematic. They wanted a wire transfer, but we sent that check, and I personally tried to contact them, and I was not successful. On probably the early 2018, when we saw that the check was not cashed, and I was unsuccessful. They were just a very small company that, these companies that provide canvassing services, they just usually, sometimes they work through the time where the campaigns are happening. When the campaigns are over, they do that so they can make money during the campaign season only, and then they go out of business.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I interrupted you, Mr. Tagani. Why don't you continue?
No need to. Regarding the 9th recommended penalty, the committee contests penalties related to the Facebook and Spielman transactions, as they were not incurred after the election. In its response to the staff's enforcement notice, The committee explained that the advertisements on Facebook were arranged by Hilltop Public Strategies and paid for with the committee's debit card. Hilltop staff were responsible for purchasing the committee's advertisements using their own Facebook accounts, as well as for the payments. As the committee explained when responding to the enforcement notice, the advertisements were ordered and run up to Election Day, but the charges for the transactions did not appear on the bank statements until after the election. After repeated attempts to contact Hilltop, we successfully heard back from their digital staff member attached to the campaign only yesterday, and he provided banks the invoices from Facebook from his personal account, and the invoices all show that the transactions occurred before and on Election Day and were, except for one, all paid before or on Election Day. One was paid a few days after, but the services and the expense was incurred on Election Day. I immediately sent these invoices to CFB staff for review, and that was within an hour of receiving them from Hilltop. Regarding the payment to Aaron Spielman, the committee explained in its response. Yes.
You indicated after repeated attempts. Is there evidence in the record that already exists of your prior efforts to get this information without success?
There's nothing in the record. I don't know how I could go about pulling my phone records. The contacts originally were from a year ago, and the phone numbers attached were deactivated on their website. The numbers actually still are deactivated. It took me calling the DC office and then sending an email from the voicemail that the DC office uses, and then and they only had that voicemail post-COVID, and then emailing that, and I received a call back from somebody on Monday, and then received on Wednesday the invoices.
Okay, but these prior efforts were made by you personally?
Yes, the prior efforts I'm speaking to were made by me.
Okay, thank you. Go on.
Regarding the payment to Aaron Spielman, the committee explained in the response to the staff's enforcement notice that Mr. Spielman was hired to translate primary election literature to Hebrew based on advice received from CFB staff on responding to post-election audit issues. Copies of the invoice and the material he produced in Hebrew were uploaded to CSmart, but left off of the physical paper response submitted to CFB staff. The committee has sent the two documents to CFB staff since then and has printed out a page from the CSmart screen that the committee sees showing that the documents were uploaded on October 24th, 2019, before the deadline to respond to the enforcement notice. Unless there are any questions, I believe the candidate and perhaps Claudia would each like to speak as well.
Great. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you to the board, to the CFB, and everyone working really hard for not just the due diligence, but for the review of every campaign. And this is not the first time that I've come before you, and hopefully it won't be the last time. And I just want to say again, thank you for your work. I've been working with our staff to get answers for you all, but my presence here is really just out of gratitude and appreciation for the work that you do. And I'm going to hand it over to Claudia for any other updates that she might have to add.
Well, I also, with gratitude for all the assistance I had to the lives of the CFB, who really guided us. And I just want to say that it was it's a very it's a difficult system, and this campaign was run by volunteers who put their heart into this campaign. and it's just difficult to navigate it. For example, I just want to testify that the checks issue, it's very, very difficult, especially when it comes like all the way down to the final line where you send checks, but then those checks like don't get cash, and then you contact people and then they close. So I mean, a few things that have happened in the campaign has been mainly because it's kind of like out of our control. As you can see, with when we provided we had to provide our debit card number in order to comply with Campaign Finance Board. So we did everything we could to the best of our ability. So thank you very much, and I appreciate all the work during these difficult circumstances to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Ferrante, is there anything further that you'd like to add?
So I guess I'll just address the contested violations in order. I guess we'll start with alleged or recommended violation 7. Sorry. So the issue isn't so much when TrueCore went out of business. It appears to have gone out of business, or at least ceased communicating with the campaign after the election. As the campaign indicated, they were hired for petitioning, I believe. So the campaign received the benefit of these services at no cost to itself, and in addition, then had additional money in its bank account since at least October 6, 2017, which is, of course, sort of a critical time for any campaign. So the campaign has stated that it's willing to refund the contributions, but I believe it should still be subject to at least a penalty for a late refund of a corporate contribution, were the board to accept the offer to pay the amount of the contribution to the fund. With respect to recommended violation 9, the Facebook documentation had been sought by CFB staff in the initial documentation request, the draft audit report, and the enforcement notice. So although the campaign has provided it yesterday, I rejected the submission pursuant to Board Rule 1003B2. Obviously, the board is within its sole discretion to accept or consider the documentation, but I did not feel comfortable, given the late hour, to have CFB staff review and determine whether the documentation was sufficient to resolve the recommended violation. With respect to the Spielman expenditure, copies of the invoice seem to have been uploaded to CSmart, but never actually submitted. So the CFB had no evidence of the services provided or documentation sufficient to justify the expenditure until yesterday, when the campaign again provided the documentation that it had available. However, that documentation was requested, I believe, in the draft audit report and the enforcement notice. Other than that,
a question: Do we have that? I mean, you say you rejected it. Is that
well,
available
it was sent to,
right now?
So the enforcement notice is the campaign's last opportunity to provide documentation.
I understand, but I'm saying the documents that you rejected, do we have access to them in our deliberations?
They've been sent to board counsel. So were you to accept the documentation submission, you would then have access to the documents. Yeah.
Thank you. That's my only question. Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question about the offer to refund the money to TrueCorp. I mean, TrueCorp apparently is no longer in business. So
to the public funds.
To the
I'm sorry, to the public funds. I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Other than that, I don't believe I have anything to add, given the campaign's decision not to contest violations 6 or 8.
And I just wanted to say one more thing that we really went through. The campaign went through a really difficult time with our treasurer, who was having a hardship. And even though we did like our best to upload the documentation so it could be available to Campaign Finance Board, I didn't know that I could just, like email it so you could have it. It was submitted, but we were not aware that it was not disclosed. So please have that into consideration, that our treasurer was a volunteer to the campaign, going through hardship.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else? If not, thank you all for appearing. The board will now go into deliberations, and we'll be back to you in a little while. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we are all here. Yes, we're ready, Chair.
All right, so the board has deliberated with respect to the two candidates who appeared this morning, and look at a proposed motion with respect to findings and penalties in both cases, and then I'll make a motion to approve, and we'll proceed in that way. So with respect to candidate John Doyle, a 2017 candidate for City Council District 13, the board proposes to find the following violations and impose the following penalties. 1, failing to report transactions, $136. 2, failing to demonstrate compliance with cash receipts reporting and documentation requirements, $320. 3, filing late disclosure statements, $200. 4, accepting an over-the-limit contribution, $250. 5, accepting contributions from corporations, limited liability companies, or partnerships, $375. 6, making a cash expenditure greater than $100, violation, no penalty. 7, making impermissible post-election expenditures, violation, no penalty. Total penalties are $1,281. Next, Carlos Menchaca, 2017 candidate for City Council District number 38. 1, failing to report transactions, $1,600. Failing to demonstrate compliance with cash receipts reporting and documentation requirements, $105.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you go back for the record to, you broke up a little bit with the first penalty, so if you could just repeat it, I'm sorry.
The top or picked up at a particular point?
The dollar amount for the failing to report transactions just got garbled.
Number 1, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, that was $136. Okay?
Yes, that's okay. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. That was the we want to do Carlos Menchaca, first one for Carlos Menchaca.
I'm sorry. I thought we had gone back to Mr. Doyle.
No, sorry. For Menchaca, I'm sorry. That's where you broke up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let's start again from for Carlos Menchaca. 1, failing to report transactions, $1,678. Okay? 2, failing to demonstrate compliance with cash receipts reporting and documentation requirements, $105. 3, failing to demonstrate compliance with reporting requirements for receipts, $1,000. 4, filing a late disclosure statement, violation, no penalty. 5, failing to report transactions in daily pre-election disclosure statements, $250. 6, failing to document transactions, $100. 7, accepting contributions from a corporation, violation, no penalty. 8, accepting over the limit contributions, $5,900.
Chair Schaefer, number 7,
Yeah, I forgot. Yes, thank you. 7. I knew I was going to do that. The 7 is a violation, no penalty, on condition that the campaign pay back into public funds I believe it was $896.40 uncashed check amount. 8, accepting over the limit contributions, $5,900. Post-election.
Frozen up again.
Sorry, you're breaking up again?
Yes, so if you just start with number 9.
9, making impermissible post-election expenditures violation, no penalty. Therefore, the total penalties are $9,033 plus the condition of repayment to public funds of $896.40. Are we clear now, Amy?
Yes, they were all clear.
Okay, good. So I will move that the board make findings of those violations and impose those penalties. Is there a second to my motion?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Abstentions. The motion carries. All right. So going back to our agenda. Just give me a second to get back on my screen. I will also move at this time to dismiss the complaint that was filed against the campaign of John Doyle. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? The motion carries. Next, we need to ratify a general election payment. Amy, will you explain that one?
On August 6th, the staff recommended and the chair approved a payment to the Donovan Richards campaign for the general election for the Queensborough president race for $23,978. We asked the board to ratify the chair's approval of that payment.
Would somebody like to make that motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. At this time, I will move that we go into executive session, and because we have no business from executive session to report back, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. So the public hearing for today of the Campaign Finance Board is now over. Thank you very much.